Digital IDs and central bank digital currency, they are going hand in hand. And with 98% of the world moving forward with these technologies, what can we do to make sure that we are not sucked into these systems and our information is shared with everybody? Whitney Webb breaks down what you could be looking at and doing currently. And we're going to also look at a ton of detail around the world, what countries are where and what to expect over the next few years. Let's just jump right into this.
When you move into this digital currency era where the banks are issuing these stable coins, these deposit tokens that are programmable money, it's not just programmable, they're going to be sharing this data in the same database that the CIA and any other intelligence agency can access whenever they want without a warrant. This is like baking in warrantless spying on Americans into the new system to come. So there's no more Congress needing to pass, the laws that facilitate FISA warrants and stuff like that have sort of been the existing infrastructure to institutionalize warrantless spying on Americans. This is a way to literally make it a part of the infrastructure from the get-go. No more secret FISA courts, or you don't need any of that infrastructure anymore. It is the new system.
And then, so can you explain the CBDC two-tier model?
Yeah, so much of the public rhetoric on CBDCs by those that claim to oppose it is really about retail CBDC, which means that it's a CBDC that the public interacts with directly, whereby, for example, a central bank would directly issue a CBDC, and then that's the currency that the people would be using in wallets that are managed by the central bank. Retail CBDC is not nearly as common today as wholesale CBDC, and wholesale CBDC works as this two-tier system. So in this two-tier system, one of the tiers, the tier that involves the CBDC, is between the central bank and financial institutions, whereby the CBDC really only serves as a means of interbank settlement and isn't public-facing at all. And so the second tier there is the private banks, the financial institutions are issuing the money that actual people use, but all the interbank settlement is being done in a CBDC. And this is the model that's set to be followed in the United States.
Yes, and also just to catch up here, the US did pass an anti-CBDC act. So it would take, they are working to pass it, it would take kind of an act of Congress to launch a CBDC. A way that the US government could still do this is go to a private company and issue whatever they're going to do through that private company. It would take a lot of things to happen, but there are two different types of CBDC. There's the retail CBDC that you and I would use, right? If we go into a business, we pay for gas or food or groceries, whatever it is. And then there's the wholesale CBDC that is the central bank and banks would use to send money to and from. Just wanted to give you those distinctions.
Because FedNow, for example, of the Federal Reserve, that was launched solely as a means of interbank settlement, really. It's not meant to interact with the public at all, and the Federal Reserve has been very open about that. So that FedNow is essentially the infrastructure for a wholesale CBDC model.
FedNow is not blockchain. Really quickly though, FedNow has nothing to do with blockchain and DLT. It's a centralized system that sits at the Fed. And that system, all of the banks are connected to, and the Fed actually handles the settlement. The Trump administration has said that they wanted to move forward with a blockchain-based payment infrastructure that would be above and beyond what FedNow currently is. FedNow took 4 to 6 years to build and implement. And so if the US wanted to do this very quickly, the only way the US would be able to do this is to go to a private company here in the United States to get that infrastructure, something like a US version of RippleNet. That is how I imagine this would go.
Not a retail CBDC model. So when you have people like Trump and Ron DeSantis say no CBDC, they mean no public-facing CBDC. They don't mean no wholesale CBDC. And what this second tier managed by the private banks is likely to be are things like tokenized deposits, stable coins, things of financial products of that nature. And people will be interacting with that and thinking it's a private sector thing, not necessarily something managed by the federal government or managed by the central bank. But if you are concerned about CBDCs because of the programmability and surveillance aspects, tokenized deposits and bank issued stable coins can do all of those things too. You can program them with smart contracts. You can use the same controls on them and surveil them. So the idea that this is any better for financial liberty, a lot of people are hesitant about a CBDC because they see it as centralized government control. And so they're selling it this way. So we, will look at it as, oh, this is coming from the private sector. This is free market innovation and all of this stuff. But people forget that the Wall Street banks time and again have been caught engaging in brazen criminality. These are essentially, they operate as cartels, not as capitalists. And so what we're doing here is entrusting essentially banking cartels to, manage digital dollars and these stable coins and these tokenized deposits that are part of this two-tier CBDC system. And I honestly don't see how people can think that is preferable or any better than a CBDC system where the central bank is directly issuing it. And people also forget that in the United States, the Federal Reserve is owned by the Wall Street banks. Yep. So of course, the Wall Street banks don't want to be left out of the new financial system to come. They are going to have it set up so that they have a very important role to play, and their existing business models are allowed to continue into the new era.
This is what's so interesting, right? Fed now sits at the Fed, controlled by Wall Street. Trump administration wants to bring in something completely different that has nothing to do with Wall Street. This is why banks are currently worried that the future infrastructure here in the United States might not involve them as much as they would like. And this is why we're getting the pushback against some of the Genius Act and being able to use stable coins and get yield, right? You look at the banks offering anywhere from 0.25 to 0.5%. If you don't have a ton of money, you're not getting 2, 3, 4% on some of your money at the bank. And so stablecoin issuers are able to offer 6, 8, sometimes even 10%. How are the banks going to compete? This is what they're stressed out about. Now, looking at the global landscape, how many countries are currently working on this? 134 countries representing 98% of global GDP are developing and exploring CBDCs in 2025. 53 countries are running live pilots currently. The most common technical architecture across these projects uses DLT-based two-tier systems where central banks manage the core ledger while private institutions or intermediaries handle public-facing accounts. Asia leads in retail CBDC testing with China's digital yuan and India's digital rupee standing out as large-scale experiments. Talks about mBridge project, China, Hong Kong, Thailand, UAE, Saudi Arabia, the most advanced multi-CBDC cross-border pilot, also built on a DLT bridge system. And then it does talk about what Ripple's role plays here. Ripple has strategically positioned XRP and its CBDC infrastructure as the interoperability layer between national CBDCs. And CBDC private ledger enables central banks to issue and control their currencies while maintaining cross-border connectivity. Ripple has built out private XRP ledgers that central banks can go use and issue different currencies, issue whatever they want on those ledgers. Those ledgers can use themselves without using XRP directly, but if you do want to start bridging, crossing, or going international, you can and will be able to use XRP in those systems. Ripple's known CBDC-related collaborations, Project Dunbar, Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Australia, and South Africa, exploring interoperability among multi-CBDCs for real-time cross-border payments. The Digital Dollar USA, where Ripple was provided technical input for potential dollar-based CBDC infrastructure. This is where I think we're heading here, guys. Ongoing relationships with central banks of Bhutan, Palau, Montenegro, and Colombia, as well as engagements under the BIS Innovation Hub framework. And you also heard directly from somebody, Ripple, that they are dealing with over 20 central banks and different monetary authorities in multiple continents. You start to wonder, why haven't they announced some of these other ones? Could it be the ECB, the Bank of France, the Bank of England? Those type of announcements could be incredible for Ripple and XRP. If those are announced, think of the FOMO that it would create around the XRP token, regardless if people understand how these systems are used. Just the mention that is being built on XRP Ripple technology, that would be incredible for all of us. Now, Whitney Webb warns of digital IDs plus CBDCs equals grid control. I thought this was a great clip to put in with this video. Let's play this.
There's a coordinated global policy push for digital IDs as the new form of government-issued identification credentials. And they're essentially all based on your biometric data, which can be your fingerprints, your face, the iris of your eyeball. And the idea is essentially to collect all of that data and have it housed or have it tied directly to your digital ID. So your physical ID will be mapped to the digital ID. Digital IDs are not really a separate project from CBDCs and this new digital financial system. And UN documentation and also documentation from the Bank of International Settlements, they very overtly state that CBDCs and digital IDs are meant to go together. And without digital IDs, the CBDC digital finance system cannot exist. One of the reasons it can't exist without that is because of the KYC functionality built into this digital financial system. They have the know your customer protocols. They have to know who you are. And so they want to have your wallet tied to a digital ID and have that digital ID be mapped to your physical ID through the biometric data collection. So there's different efforts to make digital IDs either as NFTs, non-fungible tokens. There's also the efforts of Sam Altman of OpenAI and his WorldCoin project, whereby you scan your iris, you give them the biometric credentials of your eyeball, they give you a unique identifier, a digital ID, and it's inherently tied to a digital wallet. That is the same model the UN is using. They've already implemented it for refugees getting food assistance from the World Food Program. It's called Building Blocks.
Really quickly, you did see lines of people waiting to get their eyeball scanned to get some type of value for that, right? I don't know how much exactly was, but would you give up your retinal scan and get a digital ID for $100 or $500? What would be your limit, right? And I know we're like, let's say I'd want $1 million. Realistically, right? If you are struggling paycheck to paycheck and the world is changing quickly with AI, people are being laid off every second here. What are you going to do at the end of the day when you need to put food on the table for your family? What would be the lowest point? $500? This is how they're going to get you into these systems. And you're going to say, Sensei, I'll never do that. But when the time comes, we'll see how serious you are about staying out of these systems. This is why I want to invest in blockchain technology, because the only way I can stay out of these systems is have enough money not to be in them.
It's on blockchain. It involves refugees scanning their irises. And in order to buy food or receive their rations, they have to check out of a grocery store style place in the refugee camp. And they check out biometrically with an eyeball scan. And then the amount of food they have, the monetary value of that is subtracted from their digital wallet connected to their digital ID and their iris. So ID 2020, the UN and other stakeholders in this particular sphere often argue that the reason this is necessary is because of what they call the identity gap. And the identity gap is the claim that the lack of digital ID is preventing people, mainly the world's poor, from accessing essential services, whether it's banking, whether it's education, whether it's healthcare. They claim the only way for these people to be able to access these services is to onboard them to these identity schemes.
And what do you guys think about this crazy stuff? I did want to touch a little bit deeper on what she was saying here. Global digital IDs in 2025 now integrate extensive personal and biometric data to verify and authenticate individuals across both public and private services. These digital identities are being standardized and expanded worldwide, from the EU's digital identity wallet to China's Real DID and UK's national ID system to unify user authentication in everything from healthcare to border control, core personal data that is collected here. Every national or institutional digital ID contains baseline identifying data, including full name, date, and place of birth, gender, nationality, and residency information, address, contact information, and photo ID. This can also include your social security, your passport, and other national ID numbers. Such datasets often also linked to financial information such as tax numbers or bank verification records when integrated with e-government and KYC systems. Biometric data components talks about modern digital ID systems are increasingly biometric centric. Common forms of biometric data include fingerprints and palm scans, facial recognition data and 3D facial maps, iris or retina scans, voice prints or speech-based authentication, DNA samples in some national trials. And then this is Kenya, South Africa, and the UK, and ear shape and earlobe patterns in advanced ID matchmaking algorithms. Additional digital identifiers, integrated device identifiers and SIM cards, geolocation, GPS data, where you are getting the scan from, blockchain wallets and cryptographic identity keys, education, medical, and employment credentials stored in verifiable digital form. Now, this is all coming to our doorsteps. It's already being massively rolled out, massively tested across the world. What can you do to protect yourself here? Stay informed, stay educated, try to join some groups, maybe pushing back on some of these things. And of course, One of the ways that I am trying to stay out of this, like I said, is to invest in some of these crypto assets that if this new world is coming, where is this new world going to be built out on top of? The XRP ledger does have a lot of ways to confirm your identity without giving up your information. You start to wonder, is that maybe going to be a solution here for some of these people and countries that are pushing back against some of these digital IDs? All right, guys, thank you for being here. If you got any value, please like, share the video, leave a comment down below. Thank you for being here. Aloha. Bye.